Well, with that, we'll move on to national politics and perhaps something on those similar lines. This question, I would like to know, what is your opinion on how current industries like transport, energy and water run in terms of their relation between the government and private sector? Joe, perhaps you'd like to start on this.
Well, I think that's quite a big question, so I'm going to take it bit by bit. First of all, I mean, if you look at transport, we do have kind of nationalised companies running our trains. They're just nationalised companies from parts of Europe rather than parts of this country. And it's clearly grossly unfair when these big companies are making huge amounts of profits, raising the price of tickets whilst the taxpayer picks up the bill to do all the infrastructure and all the running of the tracks. There's bigger problems with nationalisation. London gets half of all transport infrastructure spending. Per person, a Londoner gets 4 times what someone in the north of England receives in transport spending. On energy, Labour promised to kind of help build up local alternatives to the big six, which clearly have a monopoly on energy supply. Also do a lot more on green energy. On water, there's huge profits made. It's clearly very unsustainable, and again it comes back to the wider point where you have kind of sort of shareholders making millions and millions of pounds whilst wages are falling compared to inflation and people simply can't get on in life. So there's a huge amount that needs to be done. It's not all about the role of the government and the company. There are other things that need to be, like more regional spending. But yes, the current system is clearly unsustainable in all of those industries.
So would you like to see something like HS2? Would you support that?
I think that's a different question completely.
But for the London-centric, to move away from the London-centric investment?
Well, yeah, there's all sorts that needs to be done. It's not just about transport, it's about encouraging companies to move into those areas. But yeah, absolutely. The transport in this country should not all be focused on how can we get people from the north into London. It needs to be about sort of interconnection between big cities in the north of England, for example. So I'm not exactly sure on HS2, but that broad idea, absolutely.
Felicity?
Again, I'm just going to break it down a bit because it's quite a broad question. Water specifically, I do think that certainly the current model of privatisation doesn't make any sense to me. It's a natural monopoly unless companies want to build more reservoirs, which is very expensive. It's always going to be. And all water companies currently charge the maximum price which is set by the regulator. So there isn't any real competition in the sector. I wouldn't be against it being nationalised. There's a possible argument that it could lose efficiency and people would be charged the same anyway. But I don't think there's any argument for it to stay privatised, certainly. Transport, I just wanted to talk about an issue people don't often talk about because a lot of it's focused on trains, but buses in particular I think have become a real issue. As fuel has become more expensive. And I do think that some rural bus routes especially are going to have to be, something's going to have to change because they're closing down and they're incredibly important because of social isolation, because of people's access to health. Can they go to hospital appointments, etc., and can they actually keep up connections with their friends and family? So I think some are perhaps going to have to be nationalised in rural areas like Norfolk and the southwest. But interestingly, there are actually a few social enterprise bus companies which have started up, and I can sometimes be slightly suspicious of relying on things like social enterprise for things government used to do, but they've come up with actually some very good models of this, which I think could perhaps be replicated regionally by councils if they were given the money to invest by the central government. Sorry, that was a bit...
No,
just to add something from a green perspective, I think there comes a point with transport where the government actually really needs to intervene. Like the fact that it seems that often it's cheaper to take a plane than to take a train to somewhere not that far away in the country, that is just unsustainable and ridiculous. And I think that when it comes to something like that, it would be really worthwhile for the government to be subsidising train travel because environmentally speaking, it's just a nonsense that it's cheaper for people to fly.
Planes are cheaper than trains because there's better competition in the air market than there is in the train market.
Oh, exactly, and that's the problem.
Well, to start with, Joe talks about what Labour would do in infrastructure. The last Labour government in 13 years only electrified 13 miles of railway. So that speaks for itself. In these markets, the government is a regulator. There is democratic oversight where necessary, and elected governments set the frameworks and the parameters within which businesses operate. This idea that nationalisation is going to work, well, straight off, 2 points that's wrong with nationalisation. First of all, the cost. Labour's plans for nationalisation of transport, energy and water, the Centre for Policy Study says £176 billion straight up. That's £6,500 for every household in either higher taxes or more borrowing.
Well,
You're not going to disagree, surely?
I have a different point to make. If you administer something, it makes no sense for you to own it. Only if you own something, you will invest in it. You will actually have some emotional attachment, perhaps, to it. So I don't think it is fair. As Joe said, one thing I think I agree with him fully is that it's not fair that the taxpayer foots the bill, and companies have this luxurious deal. So what I would do, I do agree that John Major made a horrible job of the railway. I think that was him. What I would do is allow the current leases to run their course, not renew them, and then, this will hurt, sell the railways lock, stock and barrel, in pieces or not.
Joe, I'm sure you'd like to disagree with that.
No, I don't think selling off the entire railway infrastructure is a good idea. No, I think again on this question, I think the costs have been disputed about the actual cost of nationalisation. If you look at the trains, for example, if we wait for the contracts to expire, which most of them are due to expire sort of in the next 5 to 10 years, then it doesn't cost a penny to kind of take them in-house. It's what countries across Europe do, and their citizens get much, much cheaper transport. And you see it when you know, if anyone's travelled in Europe, it's so cheap to travel there. So no, I mean, you talk about the cost to people, but the cost of ever inflating railway fees. And, you know, the Tories come out with stupid policies like a rail card for sort of 25 to 30-year-olds. It doesn't actually work during peak times, so they're never really going to use it anyway, as somehow that's the answer to the huge transport issues this country faces.
Labour Conservatives, how about Japan? Ladies and gentlemen, the railways are run mostly by private companies, and things turn out quite fine. The innovation in the Japanese rail is, I think, it speaks for itself. All you have to do. I'm a professional, of course, but you have to just take a peek at the sleek form of the new Shinkansen train, and you're convinced.
Would anyone like to come in on the point of nationalisation at all? Yes.
Yeah, I think Joe partly took care of my point, but yeah, so with the railways, it doesn't cost anything because you wait for the contracts to run out. With energy, we're not planning to nationalise energy, we have a public sector competitor, so that's actually not in the manifesto.
Yeah.
With regard to water and Royal Mail, we are nationalising them. But with nationalisation...
You have to win first, you're a long way off. Present
tense. I think we will win, but it's not like, the point is it's not like spending...
I read the polls recently.
Exponentiation every year, it then goes. You're acquiring an asset of equivalent value in return, which you could then theoretically sell at any point. So in terms of the balance sheet cost, it's actually neutral.
And in terms of the balance sheet...
The second point is it then brings in a revenue and profits year on year, so it's actually investment. And even in purely money terms, liquidity terms, you actually gain back that money very quickly. So the whole scaremongering about cost is just nonsense. The Tories just want to keep it in hands of private wealth creators to leech off profits off the public sector effectively.
Ben, would you like to respond?
Oh, sorry, I didn't know you'd finished. Just look at the evidence. It's the cost of nationalisation, £176 billion for taxpayers, and then the historical record of nationalised industries. In the 1990s, British Rail cost the taxpayer £2 billion per year in subsidies. In 2016, the rail franchises as a whole paid in a premium to the exchequer of around £200 million. So that is taxpayers benefiting. Railways, they are bringing money to the exchequer. Railways are now safer, less accidents. They are more efficient than before. They carry more passengers than before the war. And on top of the profits the companies make, they always pay tax on it. Corporation tax at 18% on top of all the profits they make. So the idea that these private wealth creators are leeching, it's private wealth creators who invest in the services to make them more efficient, to make them safer, and to give the better services that everyone enjoys when they use the railways today.
I think one issue that was perhaps missed there, and which we haven't actually touched on so far, is that transport is necessary for labour mobility, and that we've got to keep that in mind when we discuss transport, that also direct benefits. If labour mobility is reduced, then that reduces the ability of companies around the country to grow.
And on the audience members' point, there's also a cost of privatisation occasionally. I mean, George Osborne, when he sold off the Royal Mail, I think one of his best mates in the city made millions of pounds off that because they undersold it, and then he bought immediately and then sold it a few weeks later when the price went up. And the record of nationalisation in some industries is absolutely fantastic. Our National Health Service, compared to the United States privatised system, is absolutely fantastic.
Well, the United States is a lawful system. That's not a very fair comparison, but.
Would anyone else like to come in on this? At the back there, yeah.
Just on the topic on the NHS 1 second. The NHS has the worst health outcome rates in the whole of Western Europe. It is not a success. Let's be clear on that. But the question I was going to ask is that how on earth can high prices be a problem of these industries? It is actually the benefit, surely. By privately owning the infrastructure of natural monopolies, there is an incentive to get money and reinvest it. So finally, we can eventually get the great transport system of countries like Japan, rather than the crappy railways we have at the moment.
Well,
Jay, would you?
Yeah, why is it then that it doesn't seem that they are reinvesting it? I don't know what the most recent
Because they don't own the infrastructure.
But you think that if their real priority was improving the service, which to be honest, I mean we've all travelled on the trains, it's not particularly remarkable. If they're taking these huge profits, I think I read in 2012 it was something like 10% of the profits were reinvested, 90% went to the shareholders. That doesn't strike me as companies who really have the public's interest as their priority.
I'm actually very impressed with Sam, because just like the real question, we've had real question time. Sorry, we've had the kind of the idiot question from the audience.
Yeah, but I was speaking before. We heard it.
Well, I think that's
It's quite simply. I mean, just a simple point. The NHS is a fantastic system. Everyone in this country is very, very proud of it. It's the envy of the world.
Right, on
and
the question.
No, because that was the question. Consistently rated as one of the most efficient healthcare systems in the world. And yes, if it's a natural monopoly, and then there's very little incentive for companies to necessarily reinvest their profits.
Want to respond?
Sure, go ahead.
On the topic of the NHS though...
No, not the topic of the NHS. We're talking about nationalisation of transport.
Nationalised industries, so that was the topic, wasn't it?
Nationalised industry, yeah.
The NHS is a nationalised industry, thank you. On the topic of the NHS, you've argued that the Guardian said the only black mark against the NHS was its failure on keeping people alive. I mean, what the hell is the point?
Alright, we're going to take that as a comment. Thank you very much. We'll move on. We don't want to get dragged into the NHS, we'll be here all day.